And we are live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's up, guys? Nick from P2W Fantasy here with Kevin on our weekly Wednesday show. So we're going to be bringing you this show every single week. I thought about it earlier, Kevin. I'm like, man, I should have named it something super creative or cool, but I guess we'll just stick with the brand on the bottom. But thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for listening. Kevin is a guy I've collaborated with many times in the past. I think back when we didn't have a ton of a following, but I think our kind of mentalities and work rates have always been pretty consistent. But I have to introduce Kevin. Not that anybody who follows me should know Kevin, but Kevin, featured writer for Fantasy Pros. You're the co-host on the Devy Royale, the co-host on the Super FF Bros with Jacob Dunn, and then member of Triple Play Fantasy, which is a bunch of great guys, good friends of both Kevin and I. But Kevin, thank you for doing this podcast, man. If I had to pick anybody, it had to be you for sure. What's been up? What's been up lately? I know we're getting close to the season. What's been going on with you specifically?
Yeah, man, I appreciate you. We're thinking of this. I think no name is perfect. We're just kind of under the radar. All we care about is fantasy.
Low key.
We don't need a cool name or anything like that. And plus, I'm not creative enough to do that. But I think that fits us well. And I'm just excited for football. I can't do the hot takes anymore. I can't do the Levion Bell as a Dynasty 1 running back. I'm done. I quit. I just want to see games, and we can get into it and just talk about it. And I think that's what we're here to do, have some fun and just talk football and just kind of, this is what we're here, have fun. And I think that's the biggest thing that people lack in this space sometimes is like, hey, this is about football and the game that we love, not so much about, and you don't have to get mad all the time. Just have fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, both you and I take it serious in the extent that we put out like a lot of content. We're sharing our opinions all the time, but also going with, taking things too serious or like going over the top. I feel like we're very much ourselves all the time when it comes to our content, our streaming, and everything that's going on. And I agree. I'm sick of the same like hot takes and the banter on Twitter and the back and forth debating nonstop all the time. I am just like thankful that we have some football to look forward to. And I was telling Kevin before the show, I'm coaching now, just coming off a tough loss. Big tough loss today, and it's kind of mentally rough as a former player, but so excited to talk football and talk about something that we've been waiting so long for. So basically, what's going on is every week Kevin and I will be live on Wednesdays. We will talk about the week prior and the week ahead, and just answer some questions, talk through some starts and sits, what we're looking forward to, and our reactions on things. So we'll probably just have a mix of everything. And, him and I will both do our own things on other shows or individually. But I think collaborating will make sure that we hit pretty much everything together all in one show here. So, again, thank you guys for tuning in. Before we get into anything football related, I want to make sure that I shout out Fantasy Points, the one-stop shop that I personally use on a daily basis for making content, for looking at redraft stuff, for looking at dynasty stuff. I'm starting to get into some DFS stuff myself just a little bit, and they're a good tool for that. Some of the best writers in the business are at Fantasy Points, dropping articles on a daily basis. So definitely check out fantasypoints.com/subscribe. Use my discount promo code 21WIN10. It is 100% well worth it, and I vouch for that. Okay, so if you're joining us right now, again, we're going to have a game of the week. Oh, we got hi, Kevin, and hi, Nick, right away. What's up, Shane? Game of the week. For Kevin and I, we're going to look at some starts, some sits, and some other miscellaneous topics as we preview and get ready for week 1 of the NFL 2021 season.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win.
All right, Kevin. So easy question to start things off. First and foremost, we got I don't have the number, but we have a handful of games this week coming up to be excited for. It's week 1. A lot to experience all at once, and some changing situations. We got rookies, we got people on new teams. A lot of exciting things here. But my question to you to start things off is, what's the one game out of all the games that you are most looking forward to, and why?
Oh man, well, it's 16 games, right? 32 teams. Divide that by 2.
I can't do the math. I can't do the math.
No, dude, come on. It's Cowboys versus Buccaneers. I'm a Cowboy fan. I've been waiting for Dak to come back for this entire year, especially after what you saw in the preseason and what we had. We got DiNucci back there, all that. I think this is an interesting matchup. Buccaneers come off the Super Bowl win. What do they have? Dak versus Brady. Zeke, can he bounce back? There's a lot of storylines there. Can Mike Evans kind of bounce back? What's Godwin? Antonio Brown, he stayed out of the news, man. It's been really interesting. He's kind of stayed out of the news. And
knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood for my teams out there. But just in Rojo, I mean, there's so many different storylines and question marks, and kind of from fantasy and from NFL perspective. I want to see what the Cowboys look like this year. Our window's closing fast. They probably closed 2 years ago, but I don't want to admit it. And I want to see what they have. And I think this is a big game. Everybody's shitting on the Cowboys right now, but I do think that they're going to give this a game. I don't know if they're going to win, but I can see them covering.
All right. So I wrote this down on my show sheet here. I said, ask Kevin, call the upset now or forever hold your peace. So are you going to call the upset? Because I don't want to see if they do win. And you're like, I told all you guys this. Are you calling an upset, or are you not as optimistic?
Okay, you know what? Whatever. You know what? First show, I'm going to say that they're going to win. They will definitely cover, but I don't want to be that guy that says, "Oh, they're just going to cover," and then they cover my track. You know what? Cowboys going to win tomorrow. Shock the world. Sometimes Brady comes out slow. The Bucs, I know they're going to have that high energy, but if Dak can do it, I'll take the Cowboys. Might as well. Whatever. They've let me down my whole life. Why not tomorrow as well?
It's one of those things too, where if it doesn't happen, you'll just be like, well, the Bucs just won the Super Bowl. Like, what do you want? What do you want? But it definitely will be an exciting game. I mean, it's two, from a viewing standpoint, just in general, two explosive offenses with both teams. If you look at who's got the best trio of wide receivers when all are healthy, the two that come to mind are the Cowboys and the Buccaneers. I mean, you can throw in people will say the Bengals and the Steelers and go down the list, but these two might be fighting for that spot when it comes to the actual trio that they have. Comment from Bob just came in. CD is about to be the wide receiver 1 there. So people have been throwing his name out there a lot. Specifically in this game, is he a player that you're going to be focused a lot on? Is it like Zeke on a bounce back? Is it Dak? Who's a guy from that game that you're like, oh, I'm really going to pay attention to what this guy's performance is going to be?
Well, it's two guys. Well, CD is my guy. Like, he's my favorite player in the NFL. Like, I don't care. When they drafted him last year, it was my highlight of my life, besides my kids being born and my wedding. But
good that you fixed that. You fixed that.
CD coming out and being that guy, like, I think he's just so talented, and he's just so explosive. And I feel like we got screwed last year as football fans because Dak got hurt, and we didn't get to see what CD and Lamb could do with Dak. And in Zeke, because Zeke's my guy too. And I think Zeke, last year he still looked okay, but people think he's dead. He looks like he's in the best shape of his career. Can he be a value? And I think he can. I think he can finish as low end running back 1 this year. I really do. And that offensive line is banged up. They always are, though. But if Dak is there, I think it helps us. So, like, to me, it's Zeke and CD tomorrow. What are they going to bring, and can they live up to that fantasy expectation?
I am going to be curious for both teams to just look at the end of the game for those trio of wide receivers. So Buccaneers, obviously Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown. The Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and Michael Gallup. I think it's going to be important to see who's in the pecking order, because, and it's going to change throughout the season, and we can't overreact, but I promise after this game, everybody's going to overanalyze that. Oh, yeah. Mike Evans got 8 targets and Chris Godwin got 6, or vice versa, or CeeDee Lamb got 10 and Amari Cooper got 5 or something like that. I think that's going to be something I'm going to look forward to, because I think everybody's going to start assuming things right after this first game, and that's going to be important, I think, for people that are trying to weigh out who's the wide receiver 1 on these teams. Something I thought about.
Overreaction. Everything is overreaction tomorrow. We're gonna hear all the takes, the hot takes, the victory laps after one game. I can't wait. I'm excited for it. I hope people enjoy themselves.
I think it's a great game to open up the season, just because it's going to be an exciting game. Both sides of the ball. Dak probably on his way, hopefully, to the comeback player of the year, TBD. But if I had to put money down, I think we talked about that before. That'd be my guy there. But the game I wrote down that I'm looking forward to the most, and I'm not a fan really of either one of these teams too much. They're good teams. They're playoff teams. I'm just like never like, oh, I need to go get one of these jerseys or something like that. But not knocking the fan bases. But it is interesting because of the backstory. But the Chiefs versus the Browns this weekend, the reason it's so interesting is because the Chiefs beat the Browns in the divisional playoffs, aka the Elite Eight, this past season, 22-17. Chad Henne finished that game. I think Mahomes got hurt in that game. And I remember he threw like a pick, and then there was one play where he like sealed the deal. Like he rolled out and he found, I was watching the clip earlier, I think Tyreek Hill or somebody on an, out route or whatever. And he downed the ball. And it was like this crazy game because I think there was a moment that people thought with Mahomes out, the Browns are going to win that game. So again, two offenses that are interesting. Obviously, the Mahomes, CEH, Hill, Kelsey, that stack of players is always interesting for fantasy. Be interesting to see, if CEH is going to have a big jump in his game. And then on the other side, I think the real test for the Browns is going to be what that defense does, because I think the Browns defense should be one of the better ones this year. But how they open up the season with the Chiefs on the field is going to be interesting, because I think if they want to be an elite defense, this is like where you prove it. You verse Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And I think both teams are going to be playoff teams. I don't think that's a hot take at all, but it'll be interesting to see if the Browns come back and say like, hey, like we're going to stick it to these guys. They beat us in the playoffs. We have an elite defense. We're going to slow down Mahomes and those guys. But any thoughts on that game there? And we got Mike in the chat real quick. He said, I have to say it, Nick, go Chiefs. And hey, power to the Chiefs. They were there last year. They're going to be one of the powerhouses this year. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I think that the offensive line for the Chiefs is a big I think it's a big sticking point. I think that are they rebuilt enough? They filled some pieces, but how good were those pieces there? That defensive line and that pass rush is one of the best in the NFL in the Browns. So what can they do there? I'm interested to see what CEH truthers are going to do when he has 40 yards on Sunday. So that'll be interesting. We'll see how that works. And then also, I think the Chiefs need another wide receiver. So I know that McCole Hardman's essentially, I know he's kind of a little banged up right now. Byron Pringle's there, DeMarcus Robinson, those guys. Like, I could see them actively going out and trying to get another one. I know someone I saw recently said, Brandon Cooks. Maybe they'll trade for Brandon Cooks and be their wide receiver too there. I know Kelsey's really their wide receiver too, and I get that. But, I mean, they might come to a point where they're going to need somebody else because they didn't really address that position in the draft. So I think there's interesting storylines for the Chiefs. And, I don't like that offense as much as others. I think that obviously Mahomes is there, but that offensive line scares me. And besides Hill and Kelsey, I don't think you want to own anybody else on that roster or roster them. But it'll be interesting. I want to see what CEH does. I'm interested to see if he's going to live up to expectations.
I know you're definitely not you're not adding anybody, especially any of our really close friends when it comes to CEH. I've seen some back and forths when it comes to that, but I really think this is a statement year for him, because there's a lot of pressure. They made the move for him when they probably could have taken somebody else. I know you and I really like a different guy, but they didn't go that route. And after seeing Mahomes like scramble for his life in the Super Bowl, I think like you kind of already alluded to there is that, did they really improve it enough? And I think this is a good test for them too. So it's a good test on both sides. How good is this defense? Are they good enough to slow down Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs? And then on the flip side, how good and how much improved is this offensive line? Could they slow down Myles Garrett and then anything else that opens up from him causing havoc? So definitely think that's a interesting game as well. I'd be a homer and like throw my Bears in there, but the guy in the back wall here, if you're listening on the podcast, I got Pitts, who's not on the Bears, and I got Justin Fields, who is on the Bears. He's on the back wall. He's probably not going to play in this game. So not as excited. Not as excited. No. It's weird because it's so weird. Just I don't want to go too deep into it, but it's so weird because you want your team to win, but also you don't want like this big upset, and then they're like, no, put him back in there. Nagy's like, get his ass back in there. I don't know. It's weird.
The Andy Dalton effect. You gotta love Andy Dalton. Let's just hope that let's hope they lose tomorrow. Or Sunday. That's all I have to say.
I know. Unless they win because the guy just gets benched in the first or second quarter. But I hope the best. Hope the best for Andy Dalton and the Bears and all the other guys on the team. But I think I'll be more excited when the other guys in. But it is what it is. There a lot of good games ahead on the slate there. So what I did earlier, shifting gears here. I dropped like a waiver wire winners video. I hope I didn't rip that off anybody. I kind of thought of that one day, and I've been making those like articles last year. But I sent out this tweet of a list of guys last week, and it like blew up. And all it said was, these guys are all rostered in under 50% of fantasy leagues on ESPN. And the reason I used ESPN for the rostership is because I feel like Sleeper is super, super deep in dynasty leagues. So the rostership of players is very different than ESPN, which I think is a lot more redraft focused. So I had a list of players and I narrowed it down. And, I was thinking about, hey, before week 1, it's a good time to project who can be on that waiver wire winner article or for any of these other sites that produce those articles or videos that are for waivers, because you don't want to have to like spend so much fab or, the free agent acquisition budget week 1 when, you can kind of attack things earlier. I just had 2 home league redrafts, and I can tell you right now that a lot of guys that I've been talking about for the waivers are still floating out there. So it's very common, even though, Kevin and I, we see on the in the fantasy community all the time, like people that, are not really looked at as sleepers. Like the analysts will be like, well, that's not a sleeper. And you throw out player X, but in your home league, like that's a sleeper. Like it really is because they are free. So my big question to start things off on projecting forward now is off the waivers after this week, who's the guy that everybody you think will be hitting the waivers for going into week 2? Who's a guy that maybe we should be picking up right now before we have to run into that problem?
Yeah, it was interesting you said this because I have to get out of my dynasty mode and get out of like my normal mode because we're degenerates and it's hard. You gotta be like, okay, So what I did is I have a work league with all the teachers on my campus, and I went back and I looked and I said, okay, who is really there? And it's only 4 guys on your bench, and it's basically 9 starters. It's very, very, very small, and I think a lot of people play in that league, and we got to remember that. So for me, it's Rondeal Moore. I think that what's going to happen is, and when you look at like just what he's going to get, so the Arizona Cardinals had 4 wide receivers on the field, 20% of their snaps last year. That's the highest in the league, and they had at least 3 wide receivers on 67% of their snaps last year. So, and again, that's highest in the league. So we're going to see these guys line up in 3 and 4 wide, 4 line. Wide receivers. I think more they're going to fabricate touches for him. They're going to get him a lot of end arounds, reverses in the slot. Like this kid's a stud. I mean, the dude squats like 600 pounds. If he can stay healthy, he's a legitimate like option here. And I could easily see him kind of going off this week and people then rushing and trying to grab him because I'm not afraid of Christian Kirk or Andy Isabella. They're done. I'm not on that train. AJ Green, he's declined. So in reality, I think we could see Rondeal Moore being the wide receiver 2 on a Cardinals offense that likes to throw the ball. So give me that upside there. And if he's already there and you can maybe afford to get him, I would maybe take a shot at him. But I think after this week, we're going to see him being one of those top waiver wire ads.
Especially knowing that the quarterback in fantasy and in real life is pretty good in Arizona. And if he can, if he can ball out, I think that more than one guy, more than DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to be good week 1. Rondeal Moore only rostered in 20% of ESPN leagues right now. So he is well under the 50% mark that I usually look at. I have an interesting question for you, and I just putting you on the spot for the question, but I asked this before because a lot of people, and I've been kind of anti it, but I get he's going to be valuable, but a lot of people I think like have massive expectations for Chase Edmonds. And I'm not going to say he's not going to be good in fantasy and he's not going to have a decent season. I'm not. I just like I don't think that he's going to be Alvin Kamara like other people think that this guy's going to be for some reason. And maybe I'm just lower than the consensus. But my question to you is, if they get creative with Rondeal Moore, they start, having him rush the ball from time to time. He lines up in the slot. Maybe he's on some screen plays. Do you think that his versatility could affect and hurt Chase Edmonds at all as a pass catching running back?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's two parts to that. I think it can if Kirk and those guys don't step up. Like if AJ Green is hurt and they got to use Green in different ways, or excuse me, not Green. They got to use Rondeal Moore in different ways. And yes, because then they're going to really fabricate and try to get him. That's going to limit the touches for Edmonds. Now, let's say that Rondeal becomes their wide receiver 2. They might use him in different way. They might just use him purely in the passing game. So maybe that doesn't take away as much from Edmonds, if that makes sense. But I'm on your train too with Edmonds. To me, he's a running back 3. Like and if he gives you running back 2 numbers, that's great. But I think people are drafting him. Like I know some zero running back guys have been drafting him as a running back 1. That's going to hurt you because I don't think he's a running back 1. And I think that he's going to be low in running back 2 at best when he hits his ceiling, especially because Kyler Murray, I think he had 8 rushes, average of 8 attempts last year, I think, on the ground, somewhere around there. And I know that every time he had his prop bets, it was always like 7.5 rushes. I always hit the over and it was like 10, 11. So I think they're going to have to compete with that. And as much as people don't like James Conner's going to get some work too. So there's going to be some work in there. He's going to get some goal line carries. Edmonds is good, but I think, people are talking way too much up there. I think that he's a 1 running back 3, and then Moore can hurt that as well.
It'll be interesting to see his use, though, because like you said, it could be 2 different things. It can be just like him being that gadget guy, or he can just be like a legit wide receiver 2 getting wide receiver 2 targets on his team. I agree, though. I agree because looking at a guy that could step into some nice volume on a good offense, 20%, he rostered in 20% of leagues. If you're playing in redraft, especially on ESPN, he's probably floating out there. So I guess, I talked about it before. You want to attack your bench with guys that have some nice upside. And again, if a guy is on a good offense, he's got a good quarterback in fantasy, he's got the ability to be versatile. I think that he fits the category of having some nice upside, and he's done some good things in college. He's healthy, and I think signs are pointing in the right direction for him. Even if AJ Green gets going, kind of, he might. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to come on and at his age and I know age is, I don't want to get too deep into that, but I don't think AJ Green's going to step in and get 12 targets tomorrow or on Sunday. I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think there's going to be plenty to go around there. I wrote down the other Moore, and I feel like this is another guy. I said it on the show, the Fantasy Point show with you this past weekend. I said about DeAndre Swift, like if and I know you're a Swift guy too, but I'm like, if he doesn't pan out for whatever reason, I'm going to have a lot of fingers pointed. And I feel like Elijah Moore is probably that guy too, just because I've talked about him too much this offseason.
That's your
but
guy.
It is.
Dude.
And here's a side note, Kevin, and I'm going to have to vent here for a second. I ordered his jersey in June, and I've been arguing with this guy from China because that's where it comes from. It comes from a manufacturer in China. I've been arguing with this guy for a few months now, and I'm waiting on that jersey. So I'm trying to get a refund, and I'm trying to, and I had to reorder because that's how much I'm sold on Elijah Moore. Not in the sense of I'm getting his wrong camp number like I did with DeAndre Swift, but I'm waiting for a Jets jersey. That's crazy. I never thought I'd look in the mirror and be like, "Where's my Jets jersey at?" That's crazy. It's crazy.
Man.
But Elijah Moore, super productive at Ole Miss. Eight games played in 2020, 86 catches in those 8 games, 1,193 receiving yards in those 8 games. I think if you had an all training camp team, an all offseason team, Elijah Moore would make that because he was one of the most talked about guys off of in training camp. There's clips of him making plays all over the field. Out routes, he's going vertical. He's not just a slot guy because a lot of people were questioning if Jameson Crowder stays on this team, how will Elijah Moore fit the mold? He's everything. He does everything. If you go on YouTube and you type in Elijah Moore, he's not just in the slot making these, cut in middle of the field plays. Like he's doing everything, this guy. I think that he does have a true connection with Zach Wilson. And I think there is a high chance, and I can be wrong, that he can see 100 targets or more. So because of those reasons, he's only rostered in 40.9% of ESPN leagues, if this guy goes into Sunday and has 7, 8 targets, let's say he has 7 or 8 targets, and he catches most of them, and he either has a lot of yards or a touchdown, everybody's going to be running because he's been a name that's been thrown out there so much that I'd be surprised if he's floating still in your league. But I can understand where, he's a rookie and maybe people didn't really look into this class that much, and he's not like Jamar Chase, level name or some of these other Devonta Smith. But I'm all in on Elijah Moore, and I think that this is the last week that we will talk about him being rostered under 50%. I think after this week, he is going to be well above 50%, somewhere in the 60% range. So any thoughts on Elijah, the other Moore?
No, I like Elijah. I think too, though. I think Zach Wilson's going to have a great year. I think people are forgetting about, Zach Wilson's a good quarterback, and from everything what Saleh talked about how he's picking up the game and doing those type of things, that's a great pairing. And I do think that if Zach Wilson's going to have a good year, then you're going to have to say Moore's going to have a good year. I think Corey Davis is going to be that guy to start. But I do like your point. He's versatile, and you know what? He's going to be able to play everywhere. And we always talk about this if I don't know, a lot of people don't know. I'm more of a Debbie guy. I always talk about college guys, and when I'm looking at college wide receivers like Moore, Elijah especially, what you want to see is like be careful when people are talking about, oh well, he's a great college slot, so he's going to be a great NFL slot. What you want is a great college wide receiver that can play on the outside and the inside. And then if he moves to the inside in college, or NFL, that's fine. But you don't want just a basic slot wide receiver in college because those don't translate very well when you get to the NFL. Elijah Moore was never like that. Elijah could play on the outside and inside. So when he got to the league, you knew that he's going to be able to do it. Now, does he have a role as a slot? Yeah, he'll be very good at it, but he can do it all. And so I think that's what people forget, about profiles. So Elijah's always been somebody that I thought that could do it both. He went to probably the right team, right? And he's going to be in there. It would not, you said the 100 targets thing. Hey, it would not surprise me if he led this team in targets if it worked out that way. Like if Corey Davis kind of has an okay Corey Davis year, but they're going to get him involved. They love him. Everything that came out of the camp, they liked him. So I agree. I'm surprised he's even on. I would be grabbing him over some of these other guys. Like I'm sure Mike Williams has more of a rostership than he does. Guys like that. I would be okay to have Elijah rather than Mike Williams. And I love Mike Williams, but he can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I agree with the points on Zach Wilson probably being underprojected for what he can do. Corey Davis, like you said, is another guy that, when we look at the Jets, they're going to throw the ball often. I know that's like the most common thing to say, but it's very true. They're going to throw the ball often. So if Zach Wilson actually hits and this guy is a playmaker in the NFL, both Corey Davis and Elijah Moore can be good steals because I don't know Corey Davis's ADP, but I'm going to guess it's not very good. I'm going to guess it's low.
Let me look for it. I'll look for it.
Yeah. You pull that up. I'm going to say it's somewhere. It's got to be in the. I'm going to guess. I'm not looking at nothing. It's going to be like the 33 to 35 range
for wide receiver. So
for the wide receiver position.
Yeah. So Corey Davis is wide receiver 40 right now.
Oh, so I was too optimistic. That's crazy. Though.
Would you rather have LaVisca or Corey? Because LaVisca is going ahead of Corey Davis, and I would rather have Corey Davis.
I don't know. I've been falling into the LaVisca Twitter.
No.
Twitter. I have. I know. No, but at wide receiver, who's going? Who else is around that?
So Corey Davis is wide receiver 40. So the 5 guys before him is Devonta Smith, Antonio Brown, Debo, Brandon Cooks, and then Will Fuller and DJ Chark are going right after.
So Cooks, I like a lot. I've been a big Cooks guy, but I mean, I don't know. I think he might have the best volume out of all those guys that you can count on.
Yeah. I mean, even Devonta. I mean, I think Devonta could have a good volume, but you have Hurts, and there's a question marks about what he's going to see there. I think Corey could be the wide receiver 1. His team is going to get the volume, but wide receiver 40 is ridiculous because Corey Davis had a good year last year. There's no reason to think that Corey Davis couldn't fit as a low-end wide receiver 2.
And it's interesting to see when guys do hit last year and they are in situations where they probably are going to see just as consistent a volume that they get under projected. And I think sometimes it has to do with being overly optimistic about some of the guys that have, decent ceilings. But I guess time will tell this Sunday. Let's go into each position now. We'll do a start of the week. So with these starts of the week, a lot of these guys are going to be highly rostered, I'm sure, in leagues. But I think it just for us, or for me at least, and you can speak on this, Kevin, I think it's just going to be guys that we feel more confident than their projections and more confident than maybe the consensus does for what they're going to do in fantasy for the week. So let's say a guy like, let's say I'm saying player X is my start of the week. He's projected 19 points. Maybe in my mind, I'm like, nah, he's going to smash that. He's going to get like 25 points at the quarterback position or something along those lines. So guys that we have some higher expectations for, that we're optimistic for the coming week. So we'll start with the quarterback position. I'll kick things off. This is a guy I know you like this guy, and you've written some nice pieces on him in the past. You had the big one for Sam Darnold in the past. That was very good. And I know he's a guy you've liked before too, but looking at Sam Darnold, I'm buying the narrative. I'm buying the revenge game narrative. Like I know that's like a fairy tale thing. Like Sam Darnold goes back to the Jets and he sticks it to him. But I'm buying it. I really am. Fantasy Pros ranked the Jets defense and special teams, which is just a fantasy. You're just looking at the fantasy rankings for that if you play with a defense or special teams. But it's 25. So the experts at Fantasy Pros do not feel super confident about the Jets defense. They're not actually like god awful, but they're not going to be very, very good this year. So whatever that means, I kind of put that on my note sheet here. I think the script in this game is that they're going to let Sam Darnold throw the ball. I think that they're going to let him loose in this game because, again, narratives in sports, I know people talk about it and say, man, I hope this happens, but a lot of times they actually are true. I think organizations kind of know, the pasts of some players, and I think they let them play sometimes. And I think this is a game where they're going to let Sam Darnold throw the ball. And so when you have one of the, if not the best pass catching running back in the entire NFL, when you have that easy outlet to him and there's going to be a lot of plays that way, I think that he's going to get plenty of the ball. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, maybe Terrace Marshall is going to ball out. They have some nice weapons there. Last year, he had the last 2 years, he had only 5 games of 21 plus fantasy points, but we know that the situation has not been ideal. Chasing most games, having a bad coach, bad O-line, not really good weapons. So looking at the situation for Sam Darnold, everything's changing. Everything's changing. So it's either going to be a career turnaround, and I've said this before, kind of like Ryan Tannehill, Miami to Tennessee, some sort of career turnaround, or we're going to see the true Sam Darnold, and I'm buying the better guy. I'm buying the better guy. So give me the narrative that Sam Darnold sticks it to the Jets, and I think that he's a guy I'm going to plug into my lineup if I'm juggling between him and another mid-tier quarterback. So any thoughts on Darnold versus the Jets?
Yeah, I think one thing is like my bias aside, because I really want to see him succeed because I like a good story and stuff. You and me both played sports, and I played junior college, and I know you play a little higher than I did. Revenge games are real. Like They are 100% real. Like from an athlete perspective, like no matter what happens, I still remember. Like I always remember games, how I felt, what the opposing player did. I'd wait the whole next year, and some of our coaches, we'd have it up on the board. And as a coach, we do the same shit. Like Darnold wants to win this game, and I think that his coaching staff, Brady being there, and people forget that Joe Brady is one of the best offensive-minded coaches in the world. He led Ed Orgeron to a national title at LSU. Like what he was able to do there, I think they're going to benefit him well. I will say Darnold I was nervous watching Darnold sometimes in the preseason. He's got happy feet. And like, I think that what he's got to realize is like, he's not playing for the Jets anymore. I think that game script will be better for him. But they have so many weapons on that damn team, like you mentioned, and just having CMC back there, that changes everything. I love that idea. I think this is going to be a great game, but I do also think that Sam Darnold could have a low end QB one day if he can really, really just settle down, get his guys the weapons, and just let them do the work.
Yeah, I think this game for fantasy purposes is going to surprise a lot of people because, a lot of people look at this game and say, well, it's two teams that probably won't make the playoffs, that are not going to be very good playing against each other. But I think because of that, it's going to be a nice fantasy week. I think most of the guys on both sides, we already talked about Elijah and Corey Davis, but all the guys on the Panthers, I'm excited to see them too, and I think it's going to be very fantasy happy this week for this game. I don't think there's going to be the odds of like a 10-3 sort of finish in this one at all, looking at both defenses. But quarterback wise, who is somebody you are looking forward to? This is your start of the week for week 1.
It was hard for me to put an Eagles guy on this list because I hate the Eagles. Like, I'll be honest, like I've met some pretty good Eagles fans, so shout out to you guys. But in a whole, Eagles are my least favorite team in football. But I'm gonna go Jalen Hurts at the Falcons. Like, I got to go Jalen because just how bad the Falcons are. You know, they field one of the worst pass defenses in the league the last 2 years. And in last season, road quarterbacks averaged 23 fantasy points per game against them. And then they also gave up the 9th most rushing yards to the quarterback. And Hurts, that's really fits into everything that Hurts needs to do. I think he has incredible rushing upside. And also, I always look at over-unders of games. So what I like to do is go to Vegas and see what the over-under is and just see what Vegas thinks. And right now, this over-under is at 48.5. That's a lot of points. If that's what Vegas thinks, and Vegas is not wrong a lot. I don't know if anybody knows that. Like, they know what they're doing. If we can get those points up and Jalen Hurts can get these rushing floor, like we could realistically. Now, I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy in Dynasty because I do think that there's going to have some games where he gets exposed, but not this week. Not against the Falcons, not against that terrible defense, not against the rushing upside. I think that Hurts is going to have a hell of a first week.
So Pro Football Reference has stats on what defenses gave up to certain positions. And this is tough because we're basing things off of last year, and we know that teams made changes to their positions and all of that. But just going off of last year, Falcons gave up the 2nd most points to QBs in 2020. I think that was like known that, you know, if you were streaming and redraft a quarterback to put him in versus the Falcons, I think that was like a thing that people kind of caught on to. ESPN specifically projects 19.6 fantasy points for Jalen Hurts, and I'm with you because I think he smashes that. We saw the ceiling last year against Arizona. It was his 2nd start. He scored 37.82 fantasy points. So that is a lot of fantasy points. We know that the Konami code, quarterbacks cheat code for fantasy, and I really like that call because I think that he's going to have a big game. And, you know, all these rumors, I mean, here's another narrative. And again, I'm not trying to play narratives all the time because you can get caught up in that. But here's another narrative. All offseason, all we've heard for, you know, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles is that somebody was going to, you know, come and replace him. We heard it in the draft. People were saying that they were going to draft somebody to replace Jalen Hurts. We heard it with Deshaun Watson. Now Gardner Minshew comes in, and now people were saying like, oh, he might actually fight him for the job. Nonstop has been these things that have been circulated around Jalen Hurts not being the guy. I promise he knows. I promise he sees those things. And I'm not trying to play too much into that. I'm really not. And it's probably the last time I'm going to play off of narratives, but he's got a little chip on his shoulder, and I can see him wanting to ball out. I can see him really wanting to go off in this first game. So I do like that call.
Now, I hope they lose. So I just want Eagles fans to know out there. I hope you guys lose. I just hope Hurts has a big game.
So big game for Hurts, but an L. So Kevin's saying the defense just will not handle Kyle Pitts behind me in the Falcons because he's going to score about 6 touchdowns.
Yeah. Yes. NFL Hall of Famer Kyle Pitts, you know, already.
There's a chance that he retires after the first game, but I don't want to play, you know, too much into another narrative that I've heard before. But we'll shift to the running back position. I wrote down kind of an easy answer because we know that the team is terrible that he's going to play against. But James Robinson, Jaguars running back, who is now once again the starter for sure with the Etienne injury in this offseason. But Texans may be the worst team in football. And again, I don't want to go into too much of last year, but the top 2, this is not a dig. The top 2 rushing yards given up last year. One is your Cowboys, but they're number 2. And then the Texans were the number 1. They gave up the most rushing yards last year in the NFL. And again, it's a new season. There's things that have changed, but I don't think they've done a ton to really fix that over in Houston. They added like 16 running backs. I know that for sure, but I don't think they did anything on the defensive end to fix that. But I can see the Jaguars with, you know, Trevor Lawrence's first game getting an early lead and really just pounding the rock. And I think James Robinson, we saw last year, he had 21 touches versus Cincinnati, 25 versus the Texans the second time around, 25 touches versus the Packers, 27 touches versus Cleveland. It's a different staff, of course, but this guy's handled a lot of touches at once multiple times last season. That's what made him relevant. I think the matchup in itself, plus I think guaranteed volume, makes him a very, very good play for fantasy this week. And if you have him, you're probably playing him already, but I would have no hesitation with my expectations for James Robinson versus the Texans. Any thoughts on James Robinson, who gets his second go at things here?
No, I think that's good. Just because of game script, I think that this is going to be a high-scoring game too. Because hey, the Texans are bad, but so are the Jaguars. Like, let's Urban Meyer experiment. That defense is still, still a work in progress. Like, I do think that this is going to be a good game for fantasy purposes. It's going to be a terrible NFL game, and I really don't think I'll watch it. But I do think fantasy purposes we're going to see points. And I like James. You know what? You can't hate on the guy. He's going to get the volume. I will say, like, I don't know if he's going to get as much volume as he did last year because they don't have, obviously we had Gardner Minshew, all the different quarterbacks that he had back there. Now they have a legit quarterback, and I do think they're going to use Laviska, Marvin Jones in different ways. But I like James Robinson. He's a solid play, especially with the value you probably got for him. I mean, people were drafting him, the 10th, 12th round, and now he's probably a low-end running back one option every week. So that's a solid play.
Who is your guy for the running back position, a confident start this week?
I was confident until Levion Bell signed, and now everybody's talking about Levion Bell being the next coming of Levion Bell 4 years ago. But Gus Edwards, I'm rolling with Gus. Gus Bus, baby. Now, I've been a big Gus guy forever, so if you've ever listened to me or talked to me, like, I've always said that's the guy to have on your roster because I said with Dobbins there, they love Gus. I've talked about the numbers plenty of times on podcasts, his touchdowns, his usage there. I think he's got 17. The last 8 weeks of the season last year had 17 red zone touches. And so they love to use him in the red zone. And now he's the guy. And so when we look at this, what he has, they're going to run the ball. I think they ran the ball 55% last season. At the same time, you're going to have different – and the Raiders matchup is great. It's kind of juicy there. Opposing runners from last year averaged 4 yards per rush against them and the fourth most PPR points. And I get the Gus Edwards, he doesn't catch the ball. He's going to have to catch the ball tomorrow or Sunday, excuse me. Like, they're going to use him in that way. But if he just scores, I think he can score 2 touchdowns. But I'm all about the Gus Bus. I think he's a must start. I think you're going to get cute if you don't start him.
And it's, again, going back to like points made earlier, it's a good offense. It's an offense that's going to be in good positions on the field against a team that might struggle a bit. And Le'Veon Bell, big news coming in. People are thinking that he just like did a time warp and he's the same guy that he was like 4 years ago. But he's just getting accustomed. I know he's a veteran to this new system. And Gus Edwards is a guy that this organization likes a lot. Only totaled 144 carries last season, and they project him now to be about 227 on ESPN. So he is going to get a lot of touches, and I'm with you that this is a game where he might score twice. And he is very good at finding the end zone. A couple good games last year, 14.7, 18.3, 14.2. You probably didn't draft him as your RB1 or RB2, but as a flex play, this is a good example of a good start because I would feel that he might be the third running back in your team based off of where he was going initially, depending on when your draft is. But great flex play with some nice upside, especially when it comes to scoring touchdowns. So good call.
Can you please tell me what this shit is with Le'Veon Bell? Like, I might maybe not be smart, but like he's not even the same Jets Le'Veon Bell. And then someone told me on Twitter, which is a cesspool of life, that Le'Veon Bell is the reason why CEH didn't finish as running back 1 last year. Do you understand that?
I'm just trying to picture something. Like I don't know if he was like, I don't know, putting something in his Gatorade during halftime, or he was like talking mean to him, in the huddle. Like I don't know what that means. Because I don't remember Le'Veon Bell being playable ever for fantasy. Maybe I'm not looking at the right things. On the best offense in the world last year. Maybe top 2.
Yeah, and I don't understand like who we think Levion Bell is. Like, I think there's some people that are out there. Like, I saw somebody literally he had one game against New Orleans where he had a touchdown, and I think he had 14 points per PPR. But after that, there was really nothing there. And I saw someone say, "See, if you would have listened to me a week ago, I told you to pick up Bell, you would have won your home league." Like, let's chill. Like, let's just chill.
Oh man.
Let's relax.
That is a
out
bold
here,
statement.
okay?
That's a bold statement.
That is a bold statement. That's gonna get deleted in like 3 weeks.
I feel like in that system, it's a system that this is a team that has been to the playoffs the last few years, right? They just lost their best running back.
Yeah.
I think that if that's a team that can go to the Super Bowl potentially, maybe they bust this year. I don't know. That has little to do with my point. I think Bell wanted to go somewhere probably that's going to compete. And I think you need a veteran in a system that now your running back 2 is your running back 1, and your running back 2 before Bell was signed is somebody that everybody seems to know about, but I really didn't know anything about, to be honest. So I think it was smart. You bring in a veteran. You bring in a veteran to a system that had the RB2 and the RB3 shift up the depth chart. So they're a competing team, and that's about it. Do I see a world where Le'Veon Bell eclipses 15 touches in a game? I don't know. I mean, I'd be surprised because you got running back 1, Lamar Jackson, running back 2, Gus Edwards, and that wouldn't make a ton of sense to me. But yeah, people get really caught up in the moves that they make in their fantasy league when it comes to Twitter. Wide receiver position, I must have just stacked, looking at the show notes, your Jalen Hurts call, because I threw in Devonta Smith, and I mean, it could be risky. It's his first game. Rookie, Heisman Trophy winner. I think this is a game that they're going to have to match Atlanta to a good degree for throwing. I think that they're going to run a decent amount, and Jalen Hurts is going to use his legs, but I think the Falcons will be the Falcons and be pass heavy against the Eagles. So I think it has to be matched. So if Devonta Smith, a guy that's a volume receiver, a guy that can make plays with the ball in his hands, I know that he doesn't weigh as much as people want him to weigh, but he was extremely, extremely good in college. And, you know, he can handle volume. Could he see 7-8 targets in this game? He might. He just might. And if he has some decent yardage or he finds the end zone, I think that he's going to be a good play. And I think he's only projected like 11 or 12 fantasy points, somewhere around there. But all it takes is like a big yardage play or like a score to really change that. And I'm confident in him getting connected with Jalen Hurts, who he's had some history with, and having some decent volume in this game. And we'll see how the passing game works for the Eagles. Maybe it'll be an all tight end show, but I think Devonta Smith, being the Heisman Trophy winner and the elite wide receiver he was in college, I think he's going to have a good first game here. Are you as confident or not as confident?
Yeah, you know, I've never been really down on Devonta because of his weight, or I've been jealous about his weight, actually, because my fat ass, I wish I could weigh as much as Devonta Smith. But I would say that, like, I think he could have a good game. I do think he could be wide receiver 1 on that team. Like, who are we worried about on that team? Besides, you know, to me, I think he could be. I think the real question mark, like you said, for one game, yeah, I'll take him. Can he withstand that the whole year? I don't know. I think that's always a big question mark. But to me, his value is about where it should be. Like when you're looking at like where he's getting drafted, wide receiver 35, I think that's fair. I think he's going to exceed his value as long as he stays healthy. I don't see why he couldn't do that. He's a legit separator, and I think that's where it's going to be. Is he can separate, and that's what you want from a receiver. So, especially with his size. So I like it. I like that call. I've never really been down or high on him. I've always valued him where he was at. I always valued him at the end of rookie drafts. If you could get him that value, like I wasn't going to try to reach up for him, but he went to a good spot. Now, can Hurts get him the ball? I think that's the question mark here is like, what is the consistency we're going to see with Hurts? And that offense has been bad. That offensive line's banged up. You know, do they have a new system coming in? How is it going to adapt? I think there's a lot of things that need to be worked out with that Eagles offense.
Your guy, shifting straight to your guy now, is a guy. I love this guy. I do. I really do love this guy. So go into your guy.
Come on. I mean, come on. Brandon Cooks is just shit on. And he's legit. Like he's a, you know what? Brandon Cooks has been traded, I think 75 times. It's like Madden. Poor guy just getting traded out here for draft picks. But like, I think that, he's playing the Jaguars. And as we talked about, Jaguars defense last year, the Jaguars allowed more than 41 fantasy points a game to home whiteouts a season ago. So, you're looking at kind of what they're going to give up. Cooks also had 47 points last year in 2 meetings against them. So Cooks already burns the Jaguars.
Good.
I think he has to be a flex play. Like if he's on your roster, you're starting him in your flex spot. I don't understand how you couldn't. Tyrod Taylor is not a bad quarterback. Like the poor guy got his lung punctured last year. He probably would have played more. And he's a serviceable guy. So I think that we've kind of left this offense. The Jaguars are going to be throwing. So game script again is going to be in our favor. Cooks is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 on this team. And realistically, he can get 12 to 14 targets on Sunday. Like that's a legit like, hey, ceiling for him. I think this is an easy smash if you have Cooks. I love it. I think Cooks is going to be a great flex option this whole year.
I'm playing Cooks everywhere. Everywhere I have Cooks, I'm going to play Cooks. He's been a top 16, 17 wide receiver for most of his career. He does it every single year, no matter where he's at. I know the quarterback situation is not like Patrick Mahomes or, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, but at the same time, he's been very good for fantasy. He's extremely talented. The last 2 games of the season in 2020, he combined for 26 targets. Will Fuller's out of the system. I hope Nico Collins is a stud, like I really do, but Brandon Cooks is probably one of the cheapest wide receiver ones you could have went out and got this offseason, and he's been a dude that's done it. So his ADP is terrible for what he can do and what he will do. I love that call. He's been another guy that I've been like harping on this offseason. We'll go into the tight ends and then just like spit out our maybe a sit of the week as we're getting close to the hour mark here. But Jonnu Smith's a guy I've not been super into, in all honesty, for most of his career or like in the offseason, or just in all honesty. But I really do think he has a nice opportunity at hand, and he's a guy that has grown on me in the offseason. Hunter Henry's dealing with that shoulder injury. I think he's going to play, but he's been kind of out of the mix for a little bit now. It's not an easy matchup week 1. I think they play Miami, right? Yeah. Not an easy matchup, and it's a rookie's first start. What's an easy security blanket? I think the athletic guy that's going to be across the middle is tight end. I know that's kind of cliche to say, and like a lot of people say that, but I think a tight end sometimes can be the security blanket. And my bold take is that Mac Jones' first passing touchdown is going to be Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu Smith's going to have some decent volume in this game. He might walk away as the most targeted guy in this first game. So I'm going to go Jonnu Smith as a good start against a team that's got a good defense. But again, I think the quarterback play increase. I think that he's got the potential to score, and I think he's got the potential to lead or be second in targets in this game. Any thoughts on Jonnu, and then give us your guy?
Yeah, Jonnu is you're talking to a Jonnu Smith truther here. I actually think he's going to have the second most targets on the Patriots roster this year. That's what I've been saying. I can realistically see it. I think Mac Jones just shoots everything up. Mac Jones is a legitimate quarterback, and he's gonna target his athletes, and I think they're gonna get him involved. So yeah, I think that's a good pick. He does have a tough matchup, but the Miami defense it looked good last year, but it wasn't as top as heavy as we thought. Mine is Mark Andrews, and really this is just because who else are the Ravens going to throw the ball to? And Sammy Watkins is okay. So Sammy might have his one game every year that he's going to.
Yep.
I actually did see this in a Discord somewhere. Someone was like, should I start Sammy Watkins tomorrow just because I know he's going to have a good first game? And some people agreed, like, yeah, just throw it out there. Like, so I do think that Sammy might have a game, but I think Mark is just going to get tons of targets. So to me, if you're looking at your tight end in that tight end range, obviously he's going to be a start of the week for me. And I know the other tight ends there, but I think Mark Andrews could have more PPR points than Pitts in that offense and what they were trying to do this year. Like, I think Mark Andrews kind of got shot off kind of to the side. They had kind of a down year last year, injured, other problems. Lamar didn't play very well. I think he's still going to be one of the top target getters in that offense. And I think Mark's going to surprise some people.
3 games above 20 points this past season. He can score a lot of fantasy points, and I agree that he's Lamar's go-to in a changing system in the passing offense. Him and Lamar Jackson have a good connection, and that's going to stay consistent. Last thing before we close the show out, who's a sit if you had the choice? So I'm saying if you have the choice, if you are able to pivot, if you think that I'm just throwing a random name. If you thought really that Christian McCaffrey was going to struggle in the game, you probably can't sit Christian McCaffrey. You're going to have to play him. So these sits are sits that you might be juggling them for the flex position, and we're going to tell you, hey, maybe it's not the best idea. And this one's kind of easy for me, but I know there's some hope, and I still have a little bit of hope for one of these guys, but I'm going to say don't play the Bills running backs. Playing Pittsburgh, I know Pittsburgh's defense is good. Sometimes they get over projected for how good they are, but they're a good defense. But this is going to be a shootout to a degree in this game. I think Najee Harris on the other side of the ball is going to run the ball enough, but I think that Josh Allen and the Bills are going to throw the ball a ton in this game because I don't think they're going to be super successful against Pittsburgh's defense. So Zach Moss, 8 out of 13 games under 9 fantasy points last year. Devin Singletary, 8 out of 16 games under 9 fantasy points this year. This is not the script for the game for them to pop off, in my opinion, unless one of them falls into the end zone and Josh Allen doesn't tuck and run it himself. Allen only had 4 games under 30 passing attempts. This ain't it. This is going to be a high passing game for the Bills. So I'm saying if you are juggling Zach Moss or Devin Singletary or any of the guys at the wide receiver position we've talked about for your start, for the start for the flex position this week, I'm going to say go with the other person because I just don't think that the ceiling is going to be there for either Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. Not a hot take. I know it's not a hot take, but again, people are kind of juggling. What's this flex going to be? Should I start a running back who can maybe score? And not this week for me. So any quick thoughts on that, and then your guy to close things out.
Yeah, people can't see the show sheet, but I laughed out. I put laugh out loud next to it.
You did in my coloring too, and I was like, I didn't put that in there.
I was dying. I was like, yeah, he's about right. I do still have hope for Singletary. I don't know if that's who you have hope for, but I do. Moss is always hurt. I feel like he has touchdown upside, but I still have a little bit of hope for Singletary. But we'll see. Now for me, it's Mike Gesicki from the Miami Dolphins tight end. That Ravens defense is going to be better. He was going as tight end 12 out there. I worry about starting him in this game. If I was going to pivot anywhere just to be quicker, Gerald Everett would be a guy I'd rather probably start for Seattle.
Yeah,
I'll take Gerald Everett. If I wanted to go deep, I'm definitely Cole Kmet is just he has a cold. I'm not going there. But if I wanted to go maybe a little deeper for everybody out there, I do think that Jared Cook could be a better option at this point, just because I think and if Eckler is hurt or whatever's going on with Eckler's thing, I think they can see some targets there with his hamstring. So Jared Cook could be another option there. Even Austin Hooper, maybe touchdown dependent. I just don't. Mike Gesicki is just not someone that I'm going to start. I don't really have him anywhere, but I would pivot, maybe go to Everett.
Yeah, I think Gesicki, with Tua, I wrote down, a few things from last year. Probably somewhere on my desk here, but week 13 and 14, he had 23.8 and 23.5 fantasy points back to back. But then he had, I think the 2 games after that were not super good. And I think it sometimes might have to do with the matchup. And I think against their opponents, it's going to be a tougher game to be comfortable starting him. And I think you look at, I think Kevin gave a good list of some other guys that you might be more comfortable in this first matchup starting, and then figuring out what Miami's doing with this change to their offense. So I have liked Gesicki, but he's a guy that I have in a lot of places, but he makes me nervous sometimes week to week. And I agree with that actually. That'll wrap things up as we get close to this hour mark here. So again, every Wednesday, Kevin and I will be looking back on the previous week, previewing the week ahead, just hitting a bunch of different topics, because I think that's important sometimes when you consume fantasy content, is hopefully getting a bunch of answers all at once versus only tuning in for waivers or only tuning in for starts and sits. I think we'll hit a bunch of things and hopefully get people interested as we go on with this first week of the NFL season. So, Kevin, closing things up here. You seem to be involved with everything right now. So what else is going on this week for you that people can look out for?
Yeah, you could just I usually do a monkey knife fight, and we're affiliated with them, and we're just kind of doing some prop bets for college football that I've been hitting on. I went 4-1 last week. You can go on YouTube and look at that on the Triple Play Network, and then just Devy stuff. College football is big. And unfortunately, this weekend, my wife has signed me up for 2 different things. So Sunday, I will be at a family member's house for a party.
On Sunday.
Yes. And then Saturday, I have a dinner I have to go to. So I will be sneaking out a couple of times to go see it. But yeah, my wife has decided, I have to give her credit. She lets me do all this stuff for fantasy, but somehow I got wrapped into 2 different nights of dinner and stuff. So I'm going to be missing a little bit of football this weekend.
You got to pick and choose your battles sometimes. I think some people don't have to not deal with, but some people don't have in their everyday life, like a wife and some kids, and not saying everybody needs to have those things, but it's different juggling fantasy content sometimes and like a family. Like I think it kind of goes taken for granted sometimes, the people that are able to juggle a bunch of things and make sure that we put the right people, the right things prioritize, so on Sunday I will also be talking a little bit of Monkey Knife Fight and Thrive Fantasy, sponsored with Fantasy Points. I'll be in the Fantasy Points stream there at 10 a.m. Central. Looking forward to that, and a bunch of random stuff in between, waivers on Tuesdays, and just trying to be cool and do TikToks and YouTube videos and all the other cool stuff while I yell at my soccer team to not lose and things like that. So thank you guys so much. If you listened live, if you tuned in iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, whatever your streaming device is, do me a favor, though. If you like the podcast, you listen to it today, subscribe. Check Kevin and I out every week. It's going to be me and him being ourselves, talking fantasy and giving you guys a lot of information that we spend a lot of time to prepare for. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and good luck week 1 with your fantasy matchups.